It is Dominique Beaumonte, and this is my podcast. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for taking the time to chat with me, listen to what I have to say. Hopefully, you'll find it engaging and edifying. A little bit about me. I am in my late 30s and a proud graduate of the University of Oregon and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and have spent the large majority of my career as a student affairs professional at a variety of colleges and universities, and currently work in marketing and communications for a nonprofit organization. And my passions in life are mentorship, college football, graphic design, politics, reading, and a variety of different things. So as you can imagine, every day my life is filled with vastly different things. And to give you a sense of what that looks like, I neglected to note one of the most important parts of my being is that I am an ordained minister. And so my days look a little bit like waking up early in the morning, going to Starbucks, which is where I start most of my days, reading the Wall Street Journal, reporting out to my friends the top tips and things that I gather from the Wall Street Journal that I think are interesting. I post those on my Facebook wall, sometimes on my blog, DominiqueBeaumonte.com, a variety of different things. So maybe about 10 or 15 years ago, I started a blog, which I really enjoyed, and it experienced some success, or as much success as perhaps an amateur blog could get. But I think also it's kind of weird to say amateur blog too. But it was sort of like this hodgepodge of like all the things that I cared about, like R&B music and gospel music and football and celebrity life and Jesus and books and academics and just all of these sort of things. And I think it kind of like became one of those things where I wasn't sure what it was. And so sometimes I didn't know where to start or where to end, which I think provided some really interesting sort of responses from people. But one of the things that I liked the most about the blog is that people would write me to ask questions just because they value like the context that I would bring to a lot of different things. And so that kind of inspired me to kind of want to be engaged in just helping people, talking to people, answering questions, so on and so forth. But it also like gave me a certain level of confidence with regard to my own opinion. And in gaining confidence around my opinion, it really encouraged me to want more than anything to have a really strong knowledge base about the things that I cared about. So I that's one of the reasons why I started like reading the Wall Street Journal every morning, just trying to find ways to like increase my knowledge so that I wasn't just somebody who people knew to be somebody who knew it all, but somebody who valued sources and accuracy and all those great things. So anyway, that's kind of who I am and what I stand for. And I think that my general context is like kind of centered around like theology and athletics and just friendships and all the things that are birthed through like the variety of layers that we have to have, especially as Black men, and just the code switching. And I think not to mention like being heavily involved in a secular world while like heavily committed to a spiritual lifestyle and the work of getting other people to really invest and engage in their spirituality as well, which I think is interesting. I went to one of the regrets that I have in life, which is kind of ironic, and is that I wish that I would have played football when I was in high school. I don't know why. I don't know why I never thought of it. For some strange reason, the thing that I accidentally kind of fell into was cheerleading, which sometimes, depending on the context, can be a little bit embarrassing to talk about. However, I think that the experience of being responsible for motivating people to get involved and engage in sports and other activities really is sort of the foundation of my passion for higher education and for teaching and counseling and mentoring. Because knowing the important role that I had, whether it was on the sidelines or, in the classroom, or how people viewed me, I really took to heart the role of being someone who represented spirit and pride and all those great things. But I do regret that I didn't play football, ironically, because of all the great lessons that football, that more specifically college football, has taught me. Whether it's just as a person who watches the game or the person who studies the game. But my emphasis and my interest primarily rest in the work of college football coaches. And my fascination is with how they keep young men motivated to be passionate about their craft, disciplined to get up every day and to do what they need to do, to manage a variety of different responsibilities that they have, whether it be as students, as athletes, as skilled position players, so on and so forth. So I've always kind of been inspired by that and the work that coaches do and how that overlaps with other areas of my life, even with preaching and mentoring. So that's I'm really a passionate or a football enthusiast because of what it does internally and what it means to players. So I think watching and experiencing, I also have a really crazy, I have what I would term, and I'm sure that is diagnosable in some world, is sports-related depression, which I think is interesting. It's not that I'm competitive in any other area. Sometimes I'm I'm watching an athletic event and that doesn't have anything to do, I have no connection with. And it's oh, I don't know, I hope, one team wins over the other. I'm kind of rooting for the underdog. But I have this really strong emotional attachment to some teams. And I realized this in college, I could go to a game and we could lose and it would just mess up my whole day. It would be this opportunity or this invitation, especially losing, to not be accountable to my body and my mind and my spirit. And I would often just be I'm just going to drink. And the funny thing is, it's kind of like watching that scary movie when you're in the middle of the movie and you're wait a minute, stop. I'm not in the movie. This is not real. I don't have to be anxious. I don't have to have a panic attack. And I feel like I kind of have that when I'm watching football sometimes, because it's oh my gosh. But something about college football, and when it's your team, it's difficult to sort of pull yourself out of it, because you're no, I am in this. And oftentimes, you'll see, or I'll see people who are fans of teams, college in particular. They didn't go to the college or university. They just are ardent supporters. They're not part of the Alumni Association or anything like that. And sometimes those people can be the most annoying, because it's the reason why I love the University of Oregon is not just because I went there and I had these amazing 4 years there, but I also kind of owe them $50,000. And that, to me, makes a difference. So when we lose, it's not oh, the team that I like loses. It's this experience that it's this slap at this experience that I had for 4 years, and I just feel really connected to the people and stuff like that. So even though I don't even know half the people, and so I think that that's interesting So I've kind of owned this idea that I like suffer from sports related depression, and it's kind of cool because we don't lose as much. Interestingly enough, like the reverse effect doesn't happen. So like there's not a lot of like endorphins flying. Like when we do win, it's sort of like a stable, like this is where I was before the game, and this is where I am now. Like when my team loses, like I can't even log into ESPN. Like I can't be like, oh, let me see like what's going on ESPN and make sure that like no, I like literally like the University of Oregon like should have won a game against Stanford, the Stanford Cardinals a couple of weeks ago. After the game, like I could not indulge in any kind of conversation with anybody who would even mention it. Like I almost had to like turn off my phone. And the funny thing is that I'm a loner and I'm not usually around people. But like for that loss, I happened to go and like watch I had to go and watch the game with the Alumni Association, and it was like, okay, fourth quarter. When they went into overtime, I literally left. I was like, I need to watch this part of the game in my car because there's no way in the world, but I can be here like when this. Now, if we win, great. Lost nothing. Maybe I didn't get to like jump with the people, like at the last sort of like feeling of victory. But the reality is that I'm not interested in people. I'm there, but I'm not there. So. Anyway, quite an interesting experience, and just kind of owning that is kind of interesting, and seeing also how it manifests in other people's life is really interesting. Like other people get angry and they argue and they go like, I just have to be by myself and I can't like. And it's so funny because like people, when they know that you love something or that you're passionate about something, they think like they can just casually enter in a discussion with you about it, like right after the sting of it's. I mean, and maybe this is like taking it into the dead end, but it's like, you've lost like a pet. And like somebody calls you and they start talking about how much they love their pet, and it's like, hey, not the right time. Like, or they start talking about like the sort of like the scientific level of like pet ownership and these generic aspects of pet ownership that you're like, no, like you're talking about something very generic. I'm talking about something very personal. Like, and so like you can't call me to talk stats and like parts of the game where you've seen a decline, because in my heart, in my mind, it was all a decline because we didn't win. Like, and so I've just kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I wonder like if other people like deal with that, because I think it's interesting. So yeah, I deal with the sports related depression, but it's athletics. Like it's kind of been like one of those things. I think like when I really first started like getting really deep into mentorship, like I had a lot of like young men who I didn't have a lot in common with, just based on their background, based on the way that they were raised, based on the way that I was raised, like just their family makeup. And a lot of times they would be kids that really understood football. And so since they really understood football and I really understood football, just over time, like learning and watching and being a fan and a supporter, like it was easy for me to like talk to people like in football language. Like, like if you're trying to, example might be like if you're trying to explain a really complex like idea or especially around like risk or something like that, and you talk about like, rather than saying like you had a really difficult point in your life, you need to make a decision, like saying something like, it's fourth and 3 or fourth in inches and it's the fourth quarter and you're down by 3, like, and you are in your opponent's territory, like, what do? Do you kick the ball deep and like let them run the clock and then you get the ball back and try again? Do you, all of these things that like could potentially happen, and presenting that to somebody who has a familiarity with it, they start like imagining themselves in those circumstances and they really get it. And I'm assuming that there are a lot of other things that work like that. So I started like really like delving into like really trying to understand like mentorship from the perspective of a coach after I had studied, like this art of motivation. And like I'm especially like influenced, or like I don't want to say influenced, I'm like curious about like what happens when you are in the locker room and you are at halftime and you're down by a certain amount of points, or you're up by a certain amount of points, and there's still the balance of the game and you really don't know the outcome. Like, what do you say to people that need to hear motivation? The other day, I think it was Jimbo Fisher or somebody, I can't remember, one of the major college football coaches was being scrutinized because he grabbed one of the players by the face mask and was like, hey, like, don't do this. And I guess they'd asked him afterwards, like, well, that it seemed really important, really inappropriate, and there are folks that are calling for your resignation because of the aggressive nature of what you did to this young man. And the Jimbo Fisher, whom I believe it was, started to explain that, like, to you all, it looks like this really reckless and emotion-filled, like uncontrolled, like summoning of this athlete. But the interaction that I was having with him is, hey, like I'm a part of your context, and I'm in this coaching culture that means that whatever I do to you, however I get your attention, however I shake you, like you do not doubt my intentions because of the investment that I've already made in you. And so therefore, like you are, it wakes you up. It aligns you with what you are supposed to be doing in that moment. And you don't see it as like, oh my gosh, the coach grabbed my face mask in an aggressive way. You see it as like I was on the brink of danger, and the way that he decided to get my attention was this way. And I think that, like, if you can, like, I have had so many moments in life where I'm like, okay, this style of like interacting with people is, or trying to engage people in an idea or to sell something to them, like you almost have to do it from the perspective that, like, sometimes people don't really know like what they are doing, and they don't know that what they are doing does not contribute to their overall success and victory. And so you have to employ tactics that help them to see, like, you are your way, like, down a path of destruction, and it was a time destruction, and you were a ticking time bomb. It's only a matter of time, like, you would have been something that you wouldn't have been proud about. But the employment of my coaching strategy based on me knowing you and me wanting to see you win, like in isolation might have seemed aggressive, but it was completely and totally subjective according to who you are and who I am, and the way that this system or this game works. And so I've learned a lot from coaching from that perspective. It's just like, there is on the field coaching, and then there's off the field coaching, and then there is, you don't, if you're only coaching on the day of the game, then you are not necessarily going to be as effective as somebody who is visible and coaching through the week. Like, is there a difference between folks that coach from the box and folks that coach from the sideline? Is there a difference between of folks that call plays from up in the box without having any interaction, or is that guy in the huddle, like, even though he can't see everything from that high view, like, is he better equipped to do that? And then all of these leadership lessons that we can gain, and I'm certain that there's overlap in other athletic areas. I'm sure that other sports have this similar, like, sort of testimony of success in coaching through really, like, using a coach's mindset. The other thing that I think is, like, really interesting about coaching is that, like, the one idea is that, like, everybody who coaches has been somebody who has experienced the game or played at the highest level. And I think it's interesting because there are a lot of coaches that there are a lot of college football coaches that have never played at the NFL level, or weren't even successful as as coaches. And so it really helps us to manage or like better understand like what our expectation for expertise is. Like, is expertise having the experience, or is expertise like being able to teach somebody what you have learned and even what you have not learned in a way that would motivate them to do what they're able to do to their maximum potential. So having had a little brother who played for college football, and having worked on a college campus myself, like it all is just very, 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 very fascinating. Anyway, I thank you all for taking the time to listen to my first podcast. I did not anticipate that it would be primarily about football, but I'm kind of glad about that, because that's one of the things that I really do I care about, and I think that for me it represents a lot of overlap and a lot of pride in who you are and what you represent. So hopefully you will join me again, and I pray that you have a wonderful day.